Thank you very much, guys, for being here in another Tech Talk every Friday at 2. It is super sunny today here, super warm. It is like I need to go to a pool and get a beer. So just dreaming. So again, what is the excuse? So the excuse is to have a moment where we grab a coffee and we discuss technical things with friends. I'm super happy to see that we have all friends in the call. Super nice. So as I said, grab a coffee. There is someone that is a little bit noisy. The moment I know who it is, I'm going to mute it. Hello, hello. Roll is good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Günther.
I wasn't mute.
No, okay. So this is the deal. We have an hour to discuss a technical topic. This technical topic is here because of popular demand. Let me mute everyone. Yeah. So it's about popular demand. So we are super lucky that today we have Fred. So Fred Engelen has been working with Ansible and DB2 since he was a baby. I think that I know Fred for 15 years, I think. He was really a baby. He was young at the moment. And he was already working with DB2 and Ansible, I think. So we participated in many projects together. So it's a pleasure to have Fred here. So this is the deal. I'm going to open the option that everyone can unmute himself or herself to ask questions. And it would be great if we have a conversation. So don't hesitate to ask questions. And also, if you want, you can put questions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring that during the presentation. And we are going to make this recording available if you want to get back to it later on. Right? On that, up to you, Fred. Thank you very much again.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Good afternoon. Will call today, so this will be a few months ago, I think. Just explaining the basics. I assume a little familiar tool up until now. What that first presentation was, the slides and explaining everything in detail. And I'm sure that one or two people actually tried something out. So the idea today is that it's going to be a little bit more hands-on. I have one slide, and then we're just going to dive into the code and go through some use cases. And for me, there's no issue whatsoever that this code be made available, and that will actually get you started. Chris gave me two machines that I can test on. I'm sure each and everybody of you has two machines somewhere where you can run some commands to test this out. So the idea is, let's go to it so you understand this exact use case a bit better. Then take the code home and do whatever you want with it. Start building. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen for a second. That's gonna be easier. Yep, that's visible. This is a slide from the first presentation, and yeah, as Chris said, that please interrupt me with any questions. It's not so nice to talk to a wall. This is the large overview of what Ansible does. So Ansible basically has three components. First is the inventory. It is where you say what your environment looks like, how you want to look it like. Then you have modules, which are small pieces of code that allow you to, that they basically encapsulate small functions. We have a module for file operations. We have a module for mount operations. We have a module for RPMs, opt, all that sort of stuff. Everything you do as a system engineer, most likely there will be a module for it. Sorry. So three components: inventory, what does it look like? Modules that's encapsulating the behavior of your systems, and then playbooks, which are describe your environment and what needs to happen with which system. It's basically merging the inventory, bringing the inventory and the modules together. How does it all work? It works over by default, and I believe maybe there are other options, but nobody uses that. It uses SSH from an agent, from a control node. And that's basically all you need. You don't need any client installation, unlike Puppet, for example. So let's dive straight into it. Let's move this PowerPoint out of the way, because nobody likes PowerPoint. Anyway, yes. So open my notes on the left side, my other screen. Yep. So what do we have here? Yes.
Yes. What is that editor?
That's Visual Studio.
Good.
Microsoft Visual Code. Microsoft Visual version. Yeah, everybody uses it. All the cool kids use it. And DB2 had 2 plugins for it, as I understood from iDoc. The ZOW guys.
I think you can SSH directly to your Linux as well with this one, no?
Yes. At the bottom here, I have a terminal open, a few terminals open, and they are simply SSHing to. This is the Labo1 server, and this is the Lab2 server. And there's even very nice WSL Windows services for Linux integration. So I'm running Bash here. It's good stuff. It's yeah, try it out. It's free and works great, and everybody's using it. So everybody's writing plugins for it. No reason to stay on Emacs at this point. For everybody, I can try to increase the font if need be. So the three components that we spoke about: inventory, modules, and playbook. Let's start off here with the inventory. What's our entry point? Well, here on the left side, we have a little structure. Our entry point is the hosts file. But for the system guys, I usually manage databases and instances. That's true. So right, there are 3 levels in that. There are hosts, instances, and databases. For this demo, I'll just focus on hosts and instances. Database operations are a bit harder to Ansible-ize, but it's not impossible. But we can 2 levels is already enough. So for this demo, at the top we have the hosts defined. And at the bottom, we have the instances defined. Separate things, distinct things, as you know. In this case, there's a one-on-one mapping. There's only 1 instance per host, as it's often the case in your thing. Sorry?
Fred?
Yes?
During my first trials, I set something up like this as well. But it seemed that you cannot mix if you have an entry who has children, that these children, they have to be things between brackets as well. They cannot be a mixture of the down level host and a group, right? Or can you mix them?
I was under the impression that you can mix them. Yes, I get it. I'm pretty sure you can mix them. Because I've tested at some point. Let me get my PowerPoint again.
But you can take it offline as well.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm DB2 now. The databases has children, and DB2 is a group, and Informix is a group. I would assume it's possible. I don't know. let's try out. Yeah, if not, you can always make a group with a single child.
Right.
There was another question, I think.
Frederik, can you show me the Linux file where you have all this?
The Linux file, and in this
Yes.
case, that is, well, by default, it's under etc Ansible hosts.
Okay.
It's empty right now, and I just have a subdirectory in my home directory tests where everything is dumped. So if I do
Okay.
hosts,
Okay. Fine.
it's this
Okay.
exact same file.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, grouping. Grouping is important because you want to be able to target certain groups, and at minimum you want a group for your hosts. And know, but the background it says production and development and test, etc., etc. That's the minimum you have. So we have two servers. All the one host, and this itself instance with a strict naming scheme, DB2 inst 1. That's the overview. What is the other part in the inventory? That's the variables that are can have. What's the for us, as we split up this is from the hosts, is that they're kind of duplicated. There's some of the variables that you have to redefine. Normally, you don't want to do that. In practice, I never found it too bad. Some general, as a way to refer to all nodes, there's a group which is called all, as their default. And I'm just saying that, well, in our case, there are a few users with certain privileges, and that's Chris, Hunter, and myself. Those are just things. For the hosts, what do you do with it as a DB2 admin? There's not much to do besides, where does the software come from and where does it go? These are variables that will be used later. The instances is more intricate. Now, in the hosts file, the original hosts file, I see all the instances that I define here at the bottom, and the file that I used as a source for this, I had hundreds of them. They were all members of the group insts in the end. You just level up and you end up at DB2 insts. So this is where you define your general behavior. One of them is, and this is the most important one, the inst name. Your instance name is basically take your fancy inventory host, your fancy name from the inventory, which Ansible will call inventory host name. So we had lab1_db2 becomes db2 your instance home. First variables refer to variables pretty easily. Becomes home db2 inst 1. db2 inst 1. For complicated stuff, you put your fenced users here, and you put everything that you want a db2 instance to look like. You put that stuff here. Maybe dbm CFG parameters. This would be a good place to. Instance port, yeah, we know that. Then there's the second part that makes an instance become an instance, or makes you treat it as an instance. What is an instance for us is basically a user process. So Ansible uses SSH. You can specify. Oh, I'm gonna stop there for a second. First, we go to the groups. We go back to host. We have our real instances. Every instance belongs to a group, which is the group of instances for one host. So we have a few variables there as well. These variables define the host and the user with which your Ansible will connect to it. It's not more than that. One of them is Ubuntu, and the other one is a CentOS thing. Often it's going to be root or some special infrastructure user that you have SSH keyless connection to. So this is going to be used connecting to that thing. And actually we duplicate it for the real hosts that we define in our inventory. We have that same information. And for the instances for that host, you have the same information. I leave it as an exercise to the reader to fix this. So we only have to define it once. Works well. So what is the special?
Sorry to interrupt, Fred. Just wanted to say that if anybody in this call would like to play around with those servers, so those servers that Fred used in this demo belongs to us, so we can happily share the access. So if you want to have a look and to fix stuff, as Fred suggested, that can be done.
Yep.
Sorry, Fred.
This code is on no, go ahead. This code is on Bitbucket, so I'll make it public. There's no passwords in there, so
Great.
I don't see any reason why it should not be. There's no IP addresses in there either. There's no reason why it shouldn't work. So yeah, SSH access. Ansible by default is very host based. We know that by now. It uses SSH. But it supports many different ways to switch users, and it usually the name they give to it is become, and become is has many possible ways. It can do su, it can sudo, it can do SSH, it can do lots of different plugins for become, but the default is sudo, which means in this case where we say Ansible become equals true, it says yes, do sudo, specify the become flags, which is just command line variables to sudo. H is use the home directory, and non-interactive. And we actually have to specify this here because we want to have an I, which will load the DB2 profile once we do the sudo. And then the Ansible become user is basically our instance name. So what this little combination does, together with this one here, it will tell Ansible, you connect to the second lab server using user CentOS, which we've granted SSH keyless access. And then you do sudo to start an interactive session as the instance name. And we have deducted that instance name from the inventory host name that we specified right here. So once that thing is defined for one time, you can just create instances and hosts, and they will all take that little behavior. That's probably the most important thing I have to show you today. So what does that look like? Ansible. What I'm gonna do is make sure that we don't use the default hosts like Dimitru said before. So we're just gonna make sure we're in this little directory. Ansible is so we have ad hoc commands, and we're gonna use. We have our inventory now. You kind of know what it looks like, and we're gonna fire off some modules to it. The basic module is the command, or shell is another module. You can do whatever you want. Now we're gonna, let's say, DB2 PD minus. That's a simple one. So we're gonna go to all our DB2 hosts and say, let's open a shell. That's specify the module shell, and then give the arguments to the shell DB2 PD minus. Nah, damn it. That's not working. Why is this not working? Anybody knows?
Because it is a demo.
Yeah, no, this was planned. Why? Because we are targeting our hosts. And as I said before, we have, as DB2s, we manage hosts and instances. Now, hosts, they don't understand what DB2 PD is. Because hosts, they just connect with this default user, CentOS, Ubuntu, root, whatever. So with this, with the little config we have over here, if we don't target the hosts, but we target our instances, then it should be okay. So now we have a way to send whatever we want to our instances. We can get our DBM CFG, grab memory, for example, should give automatic twice. Okay, so now we have a way to send this stuff everywhere. We chose the whole group, but we can make some sort of subset. Lab1, DB2I. That should go to only one. So if you do this, you want to make sure that the naming convention is such that you do not mix your hosts and your instances once you start pointing to them. Which is the reason why in my case, I chose lab 1 and 2 and not the complete host name. Because if I wanted to use this, this asterisk or whatever to target a set of hosts, you don't want your instances to go in there. That'll just mess it up. So that's pretty important that you choose your naming such that you do not mess up instances and hosts. And that's also no, never mind.
So Fred, just to summarize so they can recover as well. So what you show us is that after all the preparation job, so you prepare an inventory of certain elements, and then what you are doing is from a single point, you are touching all of them or a portion of the inventory elements, and then you are executing some action. So for example, we can ask specific DB2 stuff, or you could do system stuff, but you are touching the whole or a part of your inventory from a single point.
Exactly. Yeah. Right now we have we're using the shell module, which if you so the way I'm using Ansible right now is very ad hoc. It's launch a single command. So very often that will be the shell or the command module, but you could be creating files. I'm pretty sure this is a risk, but if I do lab db2 inst 1 min m file min a, and then this should be something like path dmp/test state present. With a bit of luck, no, that did not match. Lab1 with a bit of luck must be status file. There you go. Cannot changed false. Got present. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can I don't know the syntax of the file module by heart, but I would have been able to create a directory, a file, or a directory. There it is, directory. I've created a directory TMP test on one of our servers. It can be, there's a few hundreds of modules by now. Since that product has risen in popularity greatly, all the main vendors, especially networking equipment, they've all made their modules for Ansible. Okay, this is somewhat the ad hoc part. What's next is what I would like to touch upon is roles, which is something that's not in the first presentation, as that was pretty old school Ansible. New school Ansible uses roles. What is a role? In our case, it matches pretty nicely on the two inventory groups that we have. That's like the packaged behavior of, it's a bit like a packaged behavior. You could have a role for a web server, which would include tasks such as install Apache, copy these 3 configuration files, and start the damn thing up. That would be a role. You could have a role for a database server, or in our case, I have a role for a database host, and I have a role for a database instance. And combining them into a role avoids spreading all this behavior, the variables, the files that you need, the whatever the playbooks that are associated with it, spreading them out all over your directory structure, and also makes them transportable. Something that you can share, that you can also put it online. There's something called Ansible Galaxy, where you can download roles that are made by other people. And you can just customize them. What does the role look like? There's no inventory in a role. There is only behavior. There's some variables in there, and there are references to modules. I'm just going to open this whole thing up.
This directory structure is something that you created, or that is by default a directory structure?
That is by default.
Okay.
So there's a convention. There are a few conventions behind it. One of them is that every YAML file in the subdirectory called main is one that gets loaded automatically. So you have the subdirectory. The most important one is tasks, and your main.yaml is your main playbook. Missing from this playbook in this role is hosts. The normal old style playbook, and that still works, has a host definition at the top, because you want to know where it needs to be executed. That's not happening in this place. So just a quick overview. Defaults, those are variables that are normally never changed. This case is just a file directory. Vars, or variables that are expected to be changed, or they will override whatever is specified in the defaults that we just saw. Everything under files is something that you can refer to without referring to the whole full path. Templates by default go into templates, and your playbook goes into main. Some things that could be relevant to a database host is database checks. I'm just giving you a few examples here. Working for a customer, we have checkmk, and we have a few checks that we need to run on that server, and they auto discover all the instances and databases, and you send something to a monitoring server. We just need to dump a few files on them. So basically, we prepare the directory using the file module that we created. We copy a file source, this checkmk/check db2 backup, blah, 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 blah. And then we specify our demo in the configuration file, because we have different, in this case, it's backup H check. So for production, it's different. Does have to be more regularly backed up than in development. And this demo has very relaxed backup H definitions. And then we have another one that says copy. That sort of speaks for themselves. Basically, put a script, create a directory, and put 2 scripts there. What is interesting here is that we override where we make sure that we are root. So in Ansible, there are 22 places where you can specify variables. That's absolutely ridiculous. They have a very specified order of precedence. So even though we said for the DB2 host, connect with user Ubuntu or CentOS, here we can say, well, this thing I want you to do with user root. This is very root related. A second, this was just dumping files. That was pretty easy. A slightly more complicated example is a template. What's a template? That's just a file. I'm going to show it here. In this case, we wanted a few administrative users to be able to execute instance level operations. And I wanted to upgrade instances, etc., etc. So this is the Ansible templating language. And we basically, at some point here in the group vars, we specified a few DB2 admins, which was Chris, me, and Gunther, if you remember correctly. So we will transform this, create a file with it, and dump it on the server. Just a quick run of that thing. Okay. That should be it. Yep. So these are the tasks that we did, and if we then go check, for example, this template, I'm not going to show you the other one. I mean, it's just dumping a file. It's sudoers.d. That's the wrong thing. We see that the template was properly expanded for the 3 administrators that we had. So that becomes quite powerful. You only need to define this once, and this stuff is maintained all over our environment.
So Fred, just to summarize, that looks super nice. So it means that if somebody would invest time on documenting what the server should look like in roles and tasks, adding a new server is just a matter of executing the role, let's say, and you are done.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
It's kind of creating your runbook up front.
Yes, and then hopefully starting in development and test using this, and by the time you're done with it, you should be able to get very repeatable results in production. No surprises, no directories with wrong privileges and files missing and all the stuff that you come across all day when you have a job like ours.
You get not only speed to deploy, but also to get consistency. From my point of view, I think that the consistency or the value that consistency brings is super important.
Yep. And speed of delivering it. It's once you have this ready, that things go just so much faster.
What I see as an added value is that you have everything. You have your configuration brought into a few files, and when you do something, you do not miss any of the servers within your configuration. That one is an important one for me. If I do it for one, I do it for all. I can do it for all.
And you don't need to be a specialist to do it. You can just
push a button.
Push a button or give it to someone else to do it.
Oh.
Also, another advantage of this infrastructure as code approach is that your code gets versioned. You would put this in a Git repository and see what changes have been made, and you can always revert and branch, whatever, all that stuff, good stuff developers have come helps here too. Okay, I guess so.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for the last time.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I was always
That's
remember
fine.
when we had this discussion that, yeah, of course, it's super important that you keep the inventory up to date. And then you propose an approach that was more or less the following: if it is not in the inventory, therefore it doesn't exist. Meaning that,
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So for this customer, for example, that I'm working at right now, they have a tendency, and I'm sure that everybody in here has written that as well, is to have a bunch of scripts that are very much discovering. You know, you're doing a DB2I list, and you're doing DB2 list DB directory, and you're doing a lots of. Every time you want to do something, you're going to try to figure out what's on the server. Some people write to all that help you with that, but you're basically discovering, and discovering is very good for monitoring, but it's not very good for managing, at least in my perspective. So that, like you said, the reason why you do this discovering is you don't want to miss anything. The risk with an inventory is you miss anything, so indeed you try to avoid it by making sure that everything you create through the inventory. And I'll show you a little example of that later on. I was actually going to bring this point up later in a little demo. To move on with this role to round up this role concept, when I gave you this little demo here at the bottom, it says Ansible Playbook, and then I just gave it the name, the demo, which is like your master playbook in our case. It is in the root directory. It's at the same level as the hosts, and we basically say, for this group of hosts, apply this role. A lot of the times it'll match nicely, but maybe you want to add a web server on this DB2 host as well, and you would just say, here, web server, done. And it would have both a DB2 configuration and a web server configuration. So you want to maintain this master playbook, and then if you, like I said here, I used -L. That's hard to read for someone who doesn't know Ansible. You would use limit to specify only touch these hosts, and you would use tags to run just that small part by using tags. So keep your main master thing, but then make sure that your naming convention is good for your limiting, and you have proper tags, so you can select, you can execute subparts of your playbook. So we kind of have playbooks, we have inventory, we have modules, introduction to modules, and we're going to go a bit further on that. Let's say for this instance where we have it here, the DB2 PD, you could do update dbm cfg using db2 level.
You have to type
for example.
CFG. You have to type CFG.
Oh yeah, you're right. This works. Now they're both logging away, and I'm just gonna go to level 2. This is gonna work as well. And I'm gonna do a level 2 again, and then it's also gonna show me yellow. If I would go back to this file, do you remember that directory that we created? If I create it again, it's gonna show me green, which means everything goes fine. Sorry, I don't need to change this stuff anymore. It's good. Apologies. So the shell doesn't really help you with that, because the shell will just say every time I'm just run a shell. I changed them. I did some changes. If you want to have more intelligence, you're gonna have to write your own modules. So for you've written a little module which is called dbmcfg.py. So we're switching role. We looked at the DB2 host role. That's simple. Now we're at the DB2 inst role, and I don't know why this thing is complaining. That's all right. This is written in Python as an free goodies. It in Python. You can also write it in Bash. I'm not going to go over the details. Just the module, and you specify the result of it. In our case, just get dbmcfg parameter, the new value. It'll give you back whether changed, whether or not a restart is needed, because that's something that we often have when changing DB2, and it'll give you back the old value. Why the old value? That's practical for checking. You don't always want. You always don't. Sometimes you're not interested in changing it. You're already happy with knowing what the current value is. Dimitri, I'm gonna mute you for a second. Dimitri, can you mute yourself for a bit?
Just a minute. One.
Yeah, or Chris, can you mute him? Thank you. Okay, this comment is just.
Why?
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead. Chris, can you unmute Dimitri? Okay, Dimitri, I'm gonna.
I don't understand you. Why I must be in mute? I will be in mute.
No, at some. But it's fine now. If it's just about the question is just about the mute, move on. I'm sorry for that. The rest of this stuff is just parsing DB2 get dbmcfg and then updating if necessary. Read this at your own pace. Not going to bother you with that right here. But what that does allow us to do is that we can use that module. And I'm just going to have to roles db2 inst library, since I put it in did not put it in the global Ansible library. It's just in the role, which means that I can send ad hoc commands using dbscfg and run it in check mode. Everything at level 2, and it's just gonna send us back, it's check mode. I didn't change anything, but I would have changed it, and the old value is 2. That can already be very helpful in our jobs. Can we just verify that the settings are the way we want them to be? If you remove the check, this stuff happened on. You need to restart the instance for that. How would we put that into practice? You would just create a few parameters. Either you specify them separately or you have them as a group like you have here. You would refer to them in your main task inst role. Very simple. Refer to the dbmcfg module. So hard code param value. Here is the parameter hard coded with the value we have up in the main variables thing. And for the list, the one that we had here, this list. There's also a way that Ansible can handle practice. That thing would look. Can we go back to demo? Yes, so we're going to target our DB2 instances. with the tags dbmc fucking hell cgf. That's wrong. I'm just going to show you the second one then. There we go. Everything's green. It seems that I ran this thing beforehand, so everything was fine already. So you can have your default set of keys there. Higher up, some similar entries like we had before. In this case, we had the instance owner needed to do be able to mount volumes as root for snapshot purposes. I'm sure Klaas knows what I'm talking about. So we use a module line in file where we just write a single line in this sudoers file that will allow that specific DB2 instance, and there are many instances on that specific machine. Every instance will have automatically this line in mount. You don't need to bother the Linux administrators with that. That just comes with the instance. That's automatically done. The second part, and this is the topic that Chris touched already, the the creation of objects through the inventory. The first part in this is create an instance creation response file, which we go back to the templating module that we saw before, which sources a response file template. Basically, this is one is very basic, and you would make sure that this 11.5 thing is a variable, etc., etc. In real life, you would make this much more complicated with the instance name and instance port, which is all you need in reality. Let me go back to my file. Yeah, you would just basically dump that to your instance home, which is also generated automatically, or that variable is generated automatically, and then you would just as root call your DB2I setup. I said earlier that when we were talking about the different module at this point here, when we are talking about, you can use it to set stuff, but then you'll never know if it was already done or not, because shell by default will say, yes, I changed, because it's just a command. There's no intelligence behind it. There are a few ways around that, and one of them is telling your shell module, or telling Ansible, the Ansible shell module, yes, that the result of your action will create a file or remove a file. In this case, we used creates, and that means that the result, you basically tell the result of the db2i setup command will create the db2 binary, the one that we all know and love. So once you tell him that, he'll be smart enough to figure out, yes, I don't need to execute this thing anymore once DB2 already is installed. And it will just show green and say, yeah, I don't need to do this anymore. Just give me a second, I'm sorry. So to give you a little overview of what this will look like, we go back to our hosts file. It's our lab machine 1 and our instance on our lab 2. And we're just going to define a new instance, call it db2 inst2, and maybe you remember this inst port at some point in the role. There's defined by default it's 50,000. We obviously can't reuse that, so in the inventory we can define 50,002, whatever. I should probably not type it here. I'm gonna just type it down there. It's gonna be quicker than git git push and pull. So instance 2 and inst port 50,002. There we go. Now, if we just run our demo.yaml completely, it's going to do all host stuff first, but we've done that, so that's fine. Seems, yes, so right now we see that we have an extra line here, and we've redefined this instance. That little yellow line is the instant response file that was created, and in 2 minutes we're going to have our new instance ready, following the exact structure that we defined, and all the other stuff that we did around it. It's going to look exactly the same like the other ones. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of the end of the session. There we go.
Excellent, Fred. I'm super happy that you survived to this. It was super interesting. So, questions?
Should be all green right now. I should just skip over that one nice third instance. Yes, there you
go. Frederik, just one question. To give privileges of users, you used sudoers.
Yes.
There is other way to do it.
Yes, you can also SSH directly to the instance owner. If your LDAP system or your system administrators provide that to you. Right now, let me go. We have at host level, we define the Ansible user, and at instance level, just making sure, at instance level, we define the become user instance. You could also instead of defining the Ansible user at your host, you could just define your Ansible user at your instance, and then it would just SSH directly to the instance owner instead of going through root or Ubuntu, whatever. That's another thing that would work perfectly.
Okay, thanks.
That one I have to need to see in motion because I didn't get that.
Okay. Right now, the SSH connection is always done with user CentOS. And once it has reached the host, it will do sudo to the instance owner. You can do away with the sudo part and define the Ansible user variable at instance level in your inventory, and then it will connect using the instance owner directly.
Right. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, when we can start using it.
Well, I will just put this repository public and share the link with you guys. I'll send it to Chris, and Chris will send it around, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, I'll do that. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So I share the credentials and the details of the servers for those that are interested, and a recording of this session is going to be available soon.
If you should have to make a recommendation, are you more eager to use a Python than shell scripting, or does that really not matter?
I would prefer Python.
Yes, but we can use other maybe Perl. We can use Perl.
Yeah, Perl works too. Everything works. It will the Python script or your shell script or whatever will be just executed, and the parameters will be put in a file, which is your first argument to your shell script. Or it just needs to read the file.
But Python is much fun.
Let me just finish. Python is more popular. The advantage of using Python is that you have a lot that you get for free. You're creating a child class of something called Ansible module, and that means that you can do stuff like module run command. You have things like module exit JSON, module fail. You have a lot of functionality that is part of the Ansible module class, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and makes it more easy to read. But you can do whatever you want.
Okay, so Python is made for, and other things like Perl is not very good. I understand.
No, it would work. There's no. I've created them for Bash in the past, and that worked. It's even not that much more complicated than using Python. It's just that you get a few things for free, and I suggest you use them.
And make the classes by yourself. Okay. Okay.
The documentation is pretty good, and everything is open source, so you can just go copy a module that you think behaves somewhat like what you want, and take out the logic and put in your own.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Very interesting.
You're welcome.
Okay, wunderbar. Thank you very much, Fred.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much, everyone, for the participation. I hope that you recover soon. So
We got a whole weekend to recover. That should work.
it depends what you do over the weekend. Huh?
Not much going on.
All right. Excellent. Okay, super. So I'll send the details to everyone, and see you next Friday then for another Tech Talk.
All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
Fred.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Fred. You.
Bye-bye.